The following day, they all left with Stella, as Pamela's mom calls her, fidgeting every now and then over Pamela, asking her if she was alright every 5 minutes. Pamela had to explain to her that she wasn't sick per se, she was just a lucky girl who was gifted with life with the early detection of the cancer. They went straight to Dr. Eddie after calling and getting his permission to come. When they were done talking with him, Aunt Stella felt reassured that her baby was in good hands and told Dr. Eddie that money was not to be a problem at any stage. All she wants is for her baby to become free of cancer. Dr. Eddie smiled and thanked her for her kindness, but then assured her that he was Pamela's uncle and he was one of the first persons who carried her after she was born, so she was more like a doctor to him. Her life is his priority. They discussed at length, Pamela and her mom, bemused as they watched them drag who loved her more and who can spend more on her. When the argument got heated, Pamela stood up and pleaded that she was tired, and that shut them up immediately, everyone asking if she was alright. She felt a bit sorry that she got them worried, especially her mom. But if that would prevent the war she was perceiving was about to start, then she was not sorry. So she went along with her act and told them she was hungry and needed to lay down a bit. Uncle Eddie checked her pulse and heartbeat. When he was satisfied, he cautioned her not to do any tedious work before the surgery, so her body can be well rested. Aunt Stella, as Pamela had begun to call her, assured the doctor that she will make sure of that, as she was not leaving until after the surgery. Pamela and Udoka looked at her in surprise at this news, but she did as if she didn't even see them. Pamela looked at her mom pleadingly, but her mother only laughed and said she was going to the car to wait for them. When they got home, introductions were made, and in no time, the house was filled with laughter and happy talks. Pamela was shocked to see this side of her former Mrs. Igwe, the woman who used to make her tremble. She is now more of an aunt than anything else. She saw her relaxed and without a care in the world. She insisted on wearing her mom's old clothes, as she feigned excuse of not bringing any change of clothes with her. The week ran as if someone was messing with the sundial. Pamela was happy because in spite of how happy and relaxed everyone seemed, she knows the surgery has been hanging over their heads. She was only a bit sad because it meant her sister would be gone sooner than later. But with what Aunt Stella was insisting on, they may be able to see her more often than they hoped for before. Pamela went to the hospital 2 days before the surgery, so her vitals and other things could be monitored. And Stella kept shuttling between their house, the hospital, and her company. Udoka got a room in a hotel close to the hospital, but his mom insisted she would sleep where my mom was sleeping. So for peace to reign, she was allowed to do what her heart desires. She always had her way when she comes up with the guilt trip that Pamela's mom left her and ran away. She even got her parents to agree on her dad going to a hospital in a foreign country that Uncle Eddie recommended, where his spinal cord injury can be treated as they were specialists. And Stella had really gotten away with a lot of things with that threat she was giving her mom. They all knew she was doing all that to say thank you, but they just played along with her games. The surgery went well, thankfully, and when Pamela woke up, Uncle Eddie explained that the cancer had not spread. It was just as tests picked up, so she will only undergo a little chemo to kill whatever cells that may remain, and her fallopian tubes and ovaries were saved. By the third week, she could move about without much pain. Her sister Vivian called every day after her classes to speak with her on video, and she was never satisfied until she was shown a full view of Pamela. About 8 weeks after her surgery, she was in the car with Uncle Eddie and Aunt Pamela on their way to chemo center for her first chemotherapy. Her mom was home with her dad as he couldn't be left alone for too long. Her parents were so grateful for the help their friends had rendered. As Uncle Eddie was negotiating around the bend, Pamela had her eyes closed at the back of the vehicle when she heard a loud bang, the impact jolting her forward. Luckily, she was putting on the seatbelt. After a few minutes, she sat back, feeling a great pain on the surgery side, but she was distracted by what she saw in front of her. Aunt Stella was lying all the way across the windshield. Uncle Eddie alert but looking disoriented. That was when the ringing in her ears subsided a little, and she saw smoke rising around the vehicle. But before she could make a move, her side of the door was jerked open, and she heard voices as if from a distance asking her if she was okay. She felt hands lifting her up and was later taken to the hospital in an ambulance. But as she was coming in and out of consciousness, she thought for the briefest moment there that she saw Kelvin hovering over her. When she eventually woke up, she was surprised to see her mom by the bedside. She looked around and realized she was at the hospital, and immediately her memory returned. She panicked and heard her mom calling for the nurse. She saw a doctor walking. She must have been given a calming medicine because her nerves immediately calmed down, and she stared at the faces looking down on her with so much worry. She thought this must be heaven or something, because she doesn't understand why Kevin was standing there looking at her like that. She closed her eyes, thinking that when she opened them, her reality would return, but she still saw him right there. It took her mom calling to her for her to really believe that he was real. Pain and anger replaced her short-lived joy of seeing him again after 1 year plus. She just doesn't understand why he disappeared on her just 2 months after they started dating. No calls, no texts, nothing. Was she that cheap and unimportant that it didn't matter to him at all? She kept her face tightly locked each time he came into her world, which he did more often than was necessary. It seems as though he was looking for what was not lost there. Her mom noticed her hostile attitude to the handsome doctor, like she calls him, and tried to find out what might have caused it. But Pamela was too hurt, both physically and emotionally, to talk at that moment, so she said nothing. Her mom dropped it immediately, but she didn't see him again at the next round the following morning. Her mom must have noticed she was looking for him, because she told her that she requested for the handsome doctor to be replaced as her primary care doctor. Pamela was shocked and asked her mom why she did that. But the woman looked at her with a mischievous smile and said, nothing, and kept her mouth shut. She sighed, furious at the whole situation. She wondered how her aunt was doing though. Her mom had told her she was okay, but we need surgery to repair a torn tibia and remove some glass shards. Otherwise, she was doing okay. But Pamela still wanted to see her for herself. Uncle Eddie too just had a concussion, and he had been to see her several times. The impact of the accident was not so bad, if not that Auntie Stella removed the seatbelt to pick her phone that slipped from her hand, just at the point of impact. As for Pamela, her surgery site was not opened fully, but being that the impact was not too strong, she will be fine within a few days. On the second day, she was allowed to be on her feet and walk around a bit. She chose to go and see her aunt, because Uncle Eddie had returned with her mom, who was replaced by her sister Crystal. So with help from her sister, she went to see Aunt Stella and was glad that she was actually okay. When they had talked, she left to go to her own room. On her way back, someone held her hand from behind, and when she turned, it was Kelvin. She tried to remove her hand, but he pleaded with her to give him a minute. She made to forcefully remove her hand, but her sister told her to please hear him out, as she will understand when she does. She turned angrily at her sister, but Crystal said, "He told me everything this morning before you woke up. Please hear him out, then you can make your decision." All the fight left her, and she went to sit down. Kelvin sat at the seat beside her and began to explain. "When you left that day, I received a call from my dad that my grandma was dying. She raised me after my mom passed. I couldn't reach you even after trying for a long time." Pamela remembered then that her phone was stolen that night while they were all sleeping, alongside those of her roommate. She was charging hers beside the window because it had switched off immediately she left Kelvin's house as a result of low battery. So she had to change both her number and phone because she couldn't retrieve the other line. But it took her about 2 weeks to be able to save up because she didn't want to inform Mrs. Igwe at the time. But she was using a button phone, and she remembered that Kevin didn't have that number. So she explained what happened to him and asked him why his own number wasn't available. "My grandma had to be flown out almost immediately, so I went with her," Kevin replied. "I couldn't come back to inform you, and I didn't know any other way to contact you. Believe me, I felt miserable every moment I spent away from you. knowing how terrible you must feel about my sudden disappearance. When I got back after the burial of my nana, the semester was almost over, and I found out that your department were done with their exams, so you had gone home. I couldn't get your home address from anyone, so my only hope was to wait for the new session. But you didn't show up. Imagine my surprise at seeing you in that car when the accident occurred. I was going to the chemo center to deliver a message to the director when the accident occurred. Please forgive me, he pleaded. Pamela felt so selfish for all the anger she had bottled up against him when he must have been going through a very terrible time. For lack of words, she just turned and hugged him. She didn't know when the tears started coming, and she cried like she has not cried for a long time. It was as if all she had been going through came to beat at her that moment. Kelvin at some point lifted her to himself and just held her, saying nothing. When her crying had subsided to mere sniffles, she saw a hand offering tissue. She looked up to see her sister with tears in her eyes as well. She cleaned her face, refusing to lift her head from Kelvin's shoulder, ashamed for letting herself go like that when he was the one who was in mourning. But he always had an effect on her that she can't understand, so she has stopped trying. When she eventually mustered courage to look at him again, she realized he must have shed a tear or two himself, because his lashes were still damp. She smiled shyly at him and made to stand up from his lap, but he held her down and continued to scrutinize her face, as if trying to remember every angle. You are even more beautiful than my mind remembered, he said at last. But why do you look so emaciated? And can you please tell me why you have such a scar on your abdomen? At the mention of her scar, she scrambled down from his body and walked as quickly as her legs could carry her, without interfering too much with her tummy. Feeling so mortified, how could she have forgotten he was one of the doctors that attended to her when she was brought here from the accident site? She held her face in shame as she changed direction to the bathroom. After what seemed like a whole day, she stepped out of the bathroom only to come face to face with her object of shame. She tried to run back inside, but he caught her by the wrist and drew her back. She heard someone laughing, and when she peeked from under Kelvin's arms, sure enough, her nemesis called Crystal was the one laughing as if she would be paid per minute of laughter. She decided to deal with her sister later. Now she had Kelvin to deal with. He held her by the hand and started walking. I lost you once, out of my own carelessness, because it had occurred to me that I would have gone to your hostel or even to your workplace to look for you. But no, I ran like a headless chicken. But now that I found you again, there is nowhere you can hide. No hole is tiny enough to hide you, he kept saying as he led her gently down the hall. When she had a door closed, she looked around and realized he must have brought her to an office. He led her to the table and sat her down on one of the chairs while he occupied the other. She looked down at her hands, feeling trapped, but had no intention of escaping. No, sir. She goes nowhere from here, from him, ever again. She has not heard of anyone dying of embarrassment, so here she will remain. She just sat there waiting for him to say something. After a long moment of playing with her fingers, he lifted her face with a finger to her jaw. When she looked at him, he was smiling and looking at her like she was the universe. I missed you, he said softly. I missed you so much that sometimes it was like an itch that cannot be scratched. And I am sorry I hurt you. Pamela quickly shook her head and lifted her hand to the side of his face. He leaned into it immediately, closing his eyes. None of what happened was deliberate. There was nothing you would have done differently. I would have come to look for you, he interrupted, still closing his eyes. But Pamela disagreed. It was your grandma. I would have done exactly what you did if the roles were reversed. So please don't feel so bad, okay? You should be the one to apologize for being so angry with you without knowing what you were going through. I am sorry about your Nana. I wish I had met her. He opened his eyes then, took the hand she had to his face and kissed it, smiling. I told her all about you, and she asked me to tell you that you have her blessing. And if I should mess up, you are free to discipline me as you see fit. Pamela laughed. You are not serious. I swear it. She made me promise to tell you in those exact words. Pamela was laughing hard now, wishing she had really met the woman. She can imagine how incongruous she might have been when she was alive, forcing her grandson to make a promise like that. I like her. I really like her, she said between laughter. Why won't you two like each other when I am a pawn between the both of you? Kelvin said, pouting. Pamela had pity on him then and tried to control her laughter. When she was able, she gave him a light kiss on the mouth as a form of compensation, but Kelvin pulled her back as she made to sit down and kissed her like his life depended on it. Afterwards, Pamela then told him about her surgery and the reason she was on the road, told him about her connection to Mrs. Igwe, her former boss, who is now literally her aunt. He also updated her on what he had been up to in the last 1 year, especially after his grandma's death and burial. He was no longer working at that hospital. He's now working with his dad. He asked what chemo center they were going to, and she told him. The way he smiled made her ask why. Well, my dad happens to be a part owner. He went on to tell her how the place came about. My mom had cancer too, and when there was need for chemotherapy, there wasn't much in the country then. And before arrangements could be made to take her to one outside the state, as every other one is booked full, my mom had a crisis and died. So that pushed my dad to team up with an oncologist friend of his, and they established the chemo center. And now they have opened up several across the nation to prevent what happened to my mom from happening to any other person. They talked until a knock was heard at the door. Kelvin asked the person to enter, and Krista entered, looking serious. The doctors are looking for you. I denied knowing where you were to give you guys enough time to talk. But now the hospital is about to go up in flames, as such teams are being sent. So you better come out now before Aunt Stella stands up, like she has been threatening to. Pamela looked at her sister, remembering why she is her baby. All the threat forgotten in an instant. She looked at Kevin and he held her hand as he stepped out of the room. When they opened the door, they came face to face with a very handsome gentleman that should be in his 50s. Kelvin chuckled and said, Dad, I can explain. The man looked at the three of them and seeing Krista asked if this was her sister everyone was looking for. Krista nodded. He looked at Kelvin and told Pamela to please go back to her room. He wants to talk to his son. Pamela looked at Kelvin, mumbled an apology to the man, and walked away. As she went to her room, she wondered why she is always caught in an embarrassing situation with the men of this family. Kelvin came later in the evening with his dad and made proper introductions, after which she found him to be very jovial and carefree. On the day they were to be discharged, she was with Aunt Stella introducing her to Kelvin when his dad came into the room. Oh, I am glad I caught you before you left, he said. This is my personal card to the chemo center. It is for family use, so when you present it at the center, they will treat you for free. Desmond, they all heard. Pamela turned to see her aunt, looking like she had seen a ghost. Desmond, is that you? She repeated, her voice sounding like something was lodged in her throat. Kelvin's dad was looking at her when Udoka walked into the room. He took one look at Udoka and turned to Aunt Stella, exclaiming, Stella? But Udoka was trying to get his mom's attention because he doesn't understand why she was looking like that. Kelvin's dad made a strangling noise and kept shouting, Stella, as if unsure of what his eyes were saying. And Stella stood up carefully as her feet were still in a cast and told her son to take her away from there. She made to walk by herself, but she must have missed a step because everyone saw her falling, but before anyone could do anything, Kelvin's dad had carried her up. She tried to wriggle out of his arms, her face a mask of disgust, but he pleaded with her to calm down before she injured herself further. And Stella stopped, but said with such venom, You can never hurt me more than you already did, so please put me down right now. He gently sat her on the bed and stepped away, looking like he had been punched with her words. Pamela was shocked at the drama playing before her. She turned to Kelvin for explanation, but found him equally lost. Udoka carried his mom to the car and came back for her things. He told them they would wait in the car for them to round up. Kelvin went to his dad, but the man raised his hand, shaking his head as he walked out of the room on shaky feet. Kelvin escorted Pamela to the car after collecting her address and phone number, with a promise to come see her the following day. Udoka drove them home because Aunt Stella insisted she wants to stay with Pamela and her family while she was recovering. Pamela pondered on what had happened, but decided to give her aunt some space. She will speak when she is ready. When they arrived, Pamela almost thought that they were at the wrong address because the house looked so different. There was new paintings, and it looked big as if an extra addition had been added to the rooms. The interior, when she entered, was completely refurbished. She was only gone for 7 days, so how was it possible? She looked at her aunt, who was back to her mischievous self. She saw some of her domestic staff in the house as well. She was just laughing, wondering at the ways the life of a person can change overnight. As she lay in her new bed, with Aunt Stella beside her, she contrasted her life now with when her father had the accident. She has now experienced the two extreme side. I was left with only gratitude that no life was lost in the process. Her love was back, and everything was falling into place. Until she heard a soft sound from her own side. She moved closer and hugged the woman around the waist, staying quiet as Aunt Stella began to sob uncontrollably, as if her heart had been broken into 1,000 pieces. When she had calmed down, Pamela remained quiet, humming a song her mom liked singing to them when they were young. Aunt Stella chuckled through her tears and said, I know that song. My mom used to sing it for Udoka when he was a baby, and it had such a calming effect on him. Yes, Pamela said. She sang it to us too. They both fell quiet again as Pamela resumed her humming. After a while, Aunt Stella spoke quietly. You have such a beautiful voice. I could fall asleep just listening to you. I am glad I met your mother, Ella baby, but I am even more grateful I was given the privilege of meeting you. I only wished I had met you much earlier. I am grateful too, Auntie. To know that I will always have you by my side gives me such joy that you cannot even imagine. Her auntie chuckled and drew Pamela closer to herself. Just when Pamela thought she had slept, she heard her auntie whisper, Desmond is Udoka's father. Pamela sat up from the bed immediately, almost kicking her aunt in the process, or maybe she did, but she had her hiss out in pain. She adjusted immediately and apologized. Her aunt also made to sit up, so Pamela quickly arranged the pillows for her to be propped comfortably. Auntie, did I hear you clearly? Pamela asked surprisingly. Kevin's dad is also Udoka's father. Yes, my dear. And her aunt proceeded to tell her the full story. She met Desmond when she just entered her senior class, and she felt so lucky at being the chosen one, because he was very handsome and also came from wealthy home, and spending was not a problem for him. So he always had a flock of girls as well as boys around him. He was attending the prestigious King's College, where only the rich go. So when the Prince of Princes started pursuing her, it was like a dream. She even received threats from girls who wanted him but couldn't get him. Eventually, she gave in when she thought he was genuine. She dated for more than 1 year before she gave in to her friend's advice to seduce him so that other girls would not take him from her. Because for that 1 year, he had doted on her like she was his world. Their differences never existed for him. And whatever she needed was supplied unless he wasn't aware of it. So she was the envy of most girls her age. When she gave in to this advice, he refused at first. But when she insisted and pestered him, he agreed, only for her to find out months later that she was pregnant. Those friends she told were the ones who went to his parents to tell them. When her parents found out and took her to their place, they were told Desmond was not in the country. So how is it possible that he got someone pregnant? She thought it was a joke because he came to her secretly 2 days before that day, but she never set her eyes on him again until she saw him at the hospital. Oh my God, Auntie. I can't imagine what you must have gone through not having anyone on your side, Pamela said. That is why your mother will remain my living angel. She never knew me from anywhere, but she gave me her life. And for that, I will always remain eternally grateful. They hugged then and finally drifted off to sleep. Desmond's dad kept coming, begging for audience with Aunt Stella, but she never did give him any, until the day Pamela's mom begged her to hear the man out, and if she is not willing to forgive, they will ask him never to return. When he returned the following day, Aunt Stella sat down to hear what he wanted to say. According to him, when he got back from seeing her, he was told that they were going to see a relative the following morning, and he wondered at the impromptu visit on a school day, but he wasn't given any choice, only for him to find out that they were actually going to the airport and at that time he couldn't go back because they told him that if he doesn't get on that plane, they will make sure that the baby and the mother suffered. But if he agrees to travel, they will take care of her and their child. So he believed them because he knows his parents can actually do what they threatened. So he left, hoping to return when he was an adult. He came back 2 years later. He came back 2 years later, though, when he was 18 and had qualified to take the inheritance his grandfather bequeathed him, but he didn't find her. Nobody knew where she had gone. He got some tidbit on how she suffered while he was away, and he regretted believing his parents. He took his inheritance and left home too, after waiting for her for about a year, and he never returned. His parents doesn't know where he is till date. His father has been looking for him, but he refused to go back because he thought Stella had died with his baby, and he couldn't forgive those who deceived him into abandoning them to such cruel fate. I have never stopped loving you, Stella, and every day I wished I never left. How could I forgive others when I couldn't forgive myself? He pleaded with her. And this is the conclusion of the story. And Stella was able to forgive Kevin's dad, and they reconciled, are trying to get to know each other after hearing their parents' story, and I must say, they have been the best of friends. Pamela had her chemo and was finally declared cancer-free. When her final result came out, she was the best in her entire department, the first female to achieve this, and she was able to do it while undergoing chemo. Her dad had traveled with her mom for his treatment. Kelvin and Pamela are waiting for her dad's treatment to be complete before they start their wedding plans. Her uncle Wilson is busy telling everyone who had ears that she was his niece when she was given a national award for excellence in the field of aerospace mathematics. Her sister Vivian went into her master's straight and is preparing for her PhD, but she promised to come home when the wedding was fixed. She had actually returned twice, before her dad traveled and when Pamela got engaged to Kelvin. And Stella and Kelvin's dad are busy behaving like teenagers. It was embarrassing to be around them sometimes, but Pamela was so happy to see her aunt shining and deliriously happy. She had also been able to convince Kelvin's dad to go to his parents. He doesn't have to keep a relationship with them, as she does not with her own family, but they need to know he was alive, and she would like them to meet their grandson, even the one they rejected. To her, they acted ignorantly, but the years would have taught them a lesson or two, as they did her parents and siblings. When Pamela remembers how far they had come, she marvels at how great their journey had been. Amongst her uncle's 5 mighty sons, only the one who their first daughter helped is beginning to find his feet. The rest are waiting for him to die so they can divide his properties, and he can no longer brag before her father because they, who are mere women, have taken their father's name to international waters, and when their surname is mentioned, it is not attributed to any male. The girl child is indeed powerful. Pamela mused as she lay on the sandy beach watching her entire family. Years had gone by. She watched as her husband Kelvin was playing in the water with her 2 children. Her mom was running away as her dad walked carefully along the sandy beach. This picnic was much needed, she thought. She tried running away when she saw Kevin made a beeline for her, but he caught her and her laughter could be heard across the ocean as he carried her into the cold water. The end. Please stay tuned for more interesting stories. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, comment. I love you all. Bye.